I'm just ready to get into this one. Let me knock it out of the park. The title of this one I've given it is Walking the Green Path of the Druid Way, and that is based on the terminology that I've been given through listening to the podcast by which I retrieved this image that you see on the screen. Links available in the show notes for that podcast. And the original link to where I found the podcast is also available in the show notes. In fact, I'm going to encourage you to go to that .org domain name. Check out all the information that you need on there. Quick disclaimer, not really disclaimer, just setting the premise. I'm going to need to do a couple things for this episode other than prepare the video footage, etc. I have to say a couple things first. For one, I need to create the context under which I'm speaking on, and that's done very instantly and very simply, just that I have ancestry in this spiritual practice that I'll be vaguely discussing and vaguely going over in this episode today. The other thing is I am not qualified at all whatsoever to speak on anything on behalf, wouldn't even try, but what I can do is just throw a couple things out there and hopefully spark some inspiration and some interest you may have. So, getting into the preparatory stages of this episode, I'm going to be opening up with a music video that I think two things there. I think I would be described as a bit doom, and of course just under my in the vein of my right up my alley, right up my cup of tea of black metal music, as that is what has always come natural to me, and that is technically what I am, a black metal musician. However, it's family-friendly video, family-friendly lyrics. I put this together last autumn, and then we'll get into an update on local venue, and I hope you guys enjoy. Here it is.
of the moon and the warmth of the sun, with the clarity of water and wind in the trees, with the courage of the lion. I am in this present moment.
Well, this place has got these notices on there on the front. If you can read, it says, I don't know if you can read that fast, but it says closure, and those signs haven't been removed, so it looks like the place is still just kind of fucking sitting there and fucking wacky as shit. Anyway, let's get back to the episode. Maybe I'll try to get in touch with the owner, or maybe the universe will respond accordingly, knowing I'm seeking him and he'll find me. I don't know, I've thought about reaching out to him, but I'll probably meet him walk down the line. Okay, cool thing I did here for this episode is actually take some video footage of me walking through a grove. It's luckily got my AI camera quality that looks pretty good. Let me know what you guys think of it. I've got to say this I would very much like to know who started planting these trees here, as we have very rich grove of some sort of trees. This particular area is actually my neighborhood. I actually live here. I'm going to give you a quick rundown on the video footage before I set the context and the premise for the actual episode. But the trees that you'll find in this neighborhood, I have one elm on my camping ground where I stay, where I live. There's one very tall elm. There's actually one oak, one or two oaks. There's like one oak on this side and then another oak tree on the other side. This is on the same block. No, this is across the street. This is actually across the street from the block where I stay. And here on this block, you'll see that there's lots of birch, actually. This particular grove here, I think this is birch as well, just judging by the color of the bark. And other vegetation, as I'm not going to go through wildlife, but the plants, flora and fauna that I'll go over is that there's a lot of those like bulbous looking plants that are like in the fields and plains. And so that's the basic gist and the rundown of me walking here through this grove. I'm going to walk through a couple other groves, and then I have a couple other stories that I would like to tell you about the particular areas. And what I want you to do is to put this stuff into practice. There's a huge pine tree. Lots of pine over here as well. This is like a prickly pine. There's even a couple other ferns around here, being that I'm recording this episode on the season of fern based on the Oyam, and there's like a lot of ferns around here as well, but these are all prickly pines over here. A prime example really quick of what I could show you that you can put into practice and apply into practice here is, not everybody has time that I do to put episodes together and to put my practice into effect. But what you can do, even if just based on hearing me and giving you an unofficial instruction, and again, I said I'm unqualified, so don't hold on too much to what I'm saying. Take it for a grain of salt. But one practice you can do is just a simple walking in a straight line through the trees and paying notice and mindfulness to what sensations you're experiencing physically, as well as mindful and awareness of what's going on in your head. And if you have other practices that you've applied to it, as I do, these practices get these very simple practices get elevated into something much much greater than a simple practice, where I have to funnel everything into my art. I'm fortunate enough to be an artist who can funnel and channel all of this stuff into his art, pour it all into music, one art form is specific and primarily my music. And that's what I have the luxury and being fortunate to be able to do, as well as the time to do that, you know. So for me to sit here and break all this down here during this video footage, it looks like I won't have time to actually do much of the explanation itself here during the footage. So for the first segment, I just want to go through what I wanted to for the footage, and then I'll close off on another segment after the footage is done. So I highly recommend you stick with me for this after the 15 minutes is up, and then you will get a lot more out of this episode. What you're looking at is a tree that actually was struck by lightning, and it fell from a lightning strike. I was standing about 30 yards away to the north of that tree that was struck by lightning, and that felled tree fell. It sat there for a month or two in the fall of last year, and I sat on that felled tree and just kind of experienced the aftermath of a dead tree that fell from a lightning strike. But it certainly is the work of Thor or Tyrannus or Zeus, and you can see here as well, trucking on along, that this grove is another special place. That tree is an oak tree for sure, big mighty oak, as well as next to it there's a mulberries that grow out of it. And then here we go, and here I am back, that's across the street from my place, and then here back in my neighborhood, I'm walking through these other trees. I mean, I just honestly want to close off this segment here, let you kind of see this without me talking. So, here we go. Okay, and so there was the footage. There was me verbally experiencing my personal experience of walking the green path of Druidry, and then here is a bit of if you're stuck with me, please let me know you're here by dropping a comment. Make sure you also like, share, subscribe to the channel, as this is being posted on the usual podcast channel. I also run a personal channel where a lot of this stuff can show up frequently and in shorter, more digestible bursts, like YouTube shorts that are 1 to 3 minutes. And I understand that even 17 minutes is too much time for most people to sacrifice in their busy lives. So if you have stuck with me this long and do take something from it, please let me know you're here in the comments. In closing here, I know that it's a bit backwards, but I'm setting the premise and creating a context here at the end of the show that the stuff that I'm unqualified for really makes it difficult for me to do anything other than that, but I'll create the context here now. My ancestry is in this practice, for one, and a bit of history on me is just that I stumble across these things where I feel as though I'm chosen for it. And here at the bit of a crossroads in my life where I seem to be at right now is where I'm still just kind of still unqualified and just showing my dedication and devotion to it in the best ways that I can. But I have a lot of experience researching and putting forth the time that it takes to gain a grasp, even the most minute of understandings about this. So let's get into another segment very quickly. Being qualified for this is just a matter of, like any place, money. Paying for the courses with money will get you certification, and then with that certification will get me, if it's not praise that I'm looking for, it would be official it would be something official that I would be looking for, where I can provide my understanding legitimately, and then at least get some acknowledgement in some way from somebody in the organization. It's in the order. It's, you know, the proper terminology, stuff like that. It's going to be, because of all that not being there, the proper terminology is most likely going to be, you know, I'll have my slip-ups, I'll have my mess-ups, and I won't have the proper terminology, like saying that, referring to this as the order and the first time. But I am still referring to it as the order, and I'm still just creating the context that, you know, until any of it's official or I've joined any courses and completed any courses, all I'm doing is seemingly speculating. And hey, no discouragement from, no self-critical, nothing self-critical is really ultimately, let me say it like this. Nothing self-critical in circumstances such as that are unavoidable. Are avoidable. There's no avoiding these self-critical circumstances under these conditions. But here is a great reminder of Beltane approaching soon this year, as it's just simply an image of the sun that I pulled from my video editing software. Excuse me. And here's the context, just cut and dry, plain and simple. I have a lot of stuff that I'd like to share about my understanding about this. But, you know, really, I'm just still a little bit kind of dumbfounded by having found any of this at all, and having been carrying it with me for all these years. It must have been 10 years ago now, if not 11 years ago now, that I discovered this order and put effort into driving out to the city from the suburbs to research stuff myself. I'm, as an artist, so as always, I've always been immersed into my art and spending time on my art, and been doing that. And then now, 10 years later, this thing has come to a culmination, and this crossroads I'm at has me a bit torn, but it looks like I might never arrive at an official context, so really all I'm doing is just a bit of commentating. But for the most part, the most important thing that I'd like to take away from saying anything here at all, and speaking on this order at all, is that the self-critical stuff, as understandable as it might be, totally unnecessary, completely and totally uncalled for. It's a nature-based religion. It's in itself not anti-Christian or anti-secular. I am, but these two things go together. I'm also done with the episode, and I appreciate you guys for listening. So, in a nutshell, you can basically sum it up as, and let's do a quick recap after, that this completely agrees with what I'm doing artistically, and what I'm doing artistically also completely agrees with me and how I've always been, the same way that I've always been. I've always been this way. So, maybe, you know, it being too soon after COVID has caused for a lot of confusion, generally, with a lot of people, and a lot of people still being a bit angry and ornery. But, hey, no problem. That's not a problem. It's nothing I can't work out, nothing that can't be talked over, and no problem that can't be solved. So what I would like to focus on right now is specifically recapping a couple things. That the music that I make is not rainbows, sunshine, lollipops, and unicorns. Number one. But this is, however, a bit of this is a passive and benevolent order. So which one do I join? You know, I'm just sitting on the fringes over here, and it's quite ridiculous that it would take so long for something to come from any of my work so far. But I have been working on a lot of different things. I've had my hands in a lot of different pies, and it's almost time to take me out of the oven. And so while I'm doing that, me making a podcast is not even what this is not even. It's not even how anybody could properly refer to any of this. Me continuing to make a podcast would be a little bit more appropriate, but I've had a podcast for 13 or 14 years. So that's something I have mentioned multiple times on this show. But I was just thinking last night, actually thinking on, this incarnation of the show actually just started last year. And I go, well, how much thinking do I think I'm going to be needing to do here to get myself out of a potentially threatening situation? As it feels that way. It certainly feels very threatening that, I would be robbed of the credit that's due for constantly reinventing myself artistically and as a podcaster. Anyway, there's no one here. It's just me in the room by myself here broadcasting, going over a couple things that I feel necessary. I feel it's very necessary to go over. I'm still on the recap portion of the show, of this episode of the show, so I think it's very necessary to recap the Oyam, and that is, for one, starting with the pronunciation, that it's pronounced Oyam. It's ancient Celtic version of the Nordic Viking runes. However, it has attachments to specific trees. It doesn't just have meanings. And for instance, if you would be doing divination or anything like that, you would be more inclined to use the Viking runes, whereas these are used for more of a cyclical purpose in the wheel of the year, and in the trees, specific tree being directly attached to each Oyam character. And again, this isn't just a recap. This is the recap, but this is also me sticking on talking on the Oyam for just a moment here, so that I can recap with myself and retain anything that I may have learned so far from the Oyam, about the Oyam, and its importance to me. I mean, it's where I will also redirect you, if you're a bit bored of hearing this kind of babble or stuff, to my Instagram, @ Mickey GemInEye, and then go check out which one I have up there now. I just have one up there right now. So, recapping that I mentioned that, just that I mentioned it, is going to help lead me into that amount of time that I have here to go over where it starts with the Maltese cross is birch. Then you have one line added each time before the Maltese is flipped upside down for the shifting of the year, when it goes from warm to cold, or when it goes from cold to back to cold again. But it's birch, rowan, ash, alder, willow, hawthorn, oak, holly, hazel, vine, ivy, reed, elder. And there's also a couple. There's also a couple for each. There's a couple meanings. There's a couple different trees represented for each one on that first chart that you saw before this one. It's surrounded by Celtic knots. These are all things that I found intriguing 10 years ago. That's why I've carried them with me all this time. So now shifting and transitioning into here, where we'll get into the more detailed chart. I've got to mention again really quick, I'm not teaching anybody anything here. Nor am I qualified. I'm simply retaining the information myself, and have no possible chance of doing so if I weren't here right now talking about Oyam. So here we go. The next chart is more detailed, and it tells you that it tells you the whole alphabet on this one. That one, those two represent the wheel of the year and the cycles and seasons. This one right here represents the what is it? So 13. Wait, 5, 10, 15, 20. 20 the 20 letters of the Oyam alphabet, and then there's 9 representations for things such as and it's written in Gaelic too, so it's really difficult. It takes a lot of time to learn. Anyway, here for the closing up of things, I'll send some links to some of the information that I've come across very recently, and that's going to be also coupled with the link to whatever applications you'll need to view this format, one of which is like an audio book. I recently listened to an audio book from a person named Silverman, I think, or Silver. And so anyway, that closes up that. If you guys are interested in it, and then you do check out some of the links, keep in touch, drop a comment, follow me on my Instagram. That'll be the best way to get in contact with me. And I always love getting in contact with people from the order. I've been to one moot, and in a local place here where I live now, and there's actually a really good story about that's inspired. I don't even know what it's gonna be yet. I'm so enamored. It's gonna be a band name was my first thought. Name the band after this experience that I had, and then have the song title and the band name be the same, and maybe an album. I don't know, but it's music, folks. It's music, guys. Either way, it's music, and it's art, and it's really direct experiences having had myself with this order. Why I'm talking about it and who I'm talking about it with is just me, for now. But putting this stuff into practice, is very important. And so, the links to stuff where you can come and find all this stuff yourself in the show notes. Always open to conversation. Always good to get in touch with people. I think actually since COVID, I've contacted one person too, who I have yet to be in touch with, but it's very difficult to do a lot of this stuff, and I'll be seeing you guys next time. All right, bye.